The Fright Mill presents Some Puzzles Are Best Left Unsolved. This one is called The Knot. You know how they say you can't go home again? Well, you definitely shouldn't go back to the places that made you happy as a kid. But the promise of a lifetime of luxury, that was just too much for me to ignore. The sign at the old forgotten fairground was practically dust, but the legend of the knot was as clear as the day I first heard it. I thought solving it would be the start of my new life. I just had no idea it would be the end of everyone else's. My friends call me Leo. I used to call myself a thrill seeker. Now, I'm just a witness. It all started with a stupid legend and an even stupider man. Me. The place was called Jubilee Park, a name that had turned into a bitter joke over the years. 30 years ago, it was the heart of our county. A place of candy floss, first kisses, and the sound of kids screaming with joy. Now it's just a skeletal ruin, a rusty monument to how fast happiness can fade. The quiet in a place like that is different. It's heavy, you know, like it's full of the ghosts of laughter. The legend itself was simple, the kind of thing passed around by bored teenagers and old men with nothing better to do. In the middle of the park, inside a rickety game booth called the Weaver's Challenge, was a knot. Not just any knot, but the knot. An impossible snarl of thick, greasy rope that looked like a nest of petrified snakes. The sign hanging above it, which you could barely read under all the grime, promised a lifetime of luxury to the nimble-fingered. Of course, I'd heard the warnings. They were practically part of the myth. Old Man Hemlock from the hardware store swore the park wasn't just abandoned, it was sealed. That the knot wasn't a puzzle, but a lock. I just laughed it off. To me, the warnings were just spooky window dressing to make a local story more interesting. So, on one late Tuesday afternoon, I decided to hop the bent chain link fence. The air inside tasted like rust and damp soil. Every step I took was a crunch of dead leaves and broken plastic. I walked past the carousel, its painted horses staring back at me with dead, chipped eyes. I passed the collapsed funhouse, a giant peeling clown face leering from what was left of the front, its happy smile decayed into total menace. And then I saw it. The Weaver's Challenge. A small, unassuming booth with faded candy stripes. Inside, sitting on a velvet cushion that had rotted into a patchy brown mess, was the knot. It was bigger than the stories said. A dense, chaotic clump of rope. It looked less like something someone tied and more like something that had grown. Carved into the wooden counter right below it were these frantic, claw-like symbols I'd never seen before. They looked less like decorations and more like a desperate warning. I decided they were just proof of how many people had tried and failed. My own greed was a fire in my gut, burning away every last shred of common sense. I pulled up a broken stool, cracked my knuckles, and got to work. Those first few hours, pure frustration. The rope was ancient and stiff. Its fibers felt like sandpaper against my skin. It wouldn't give. It was like trying to untie a knot made of rock. But I was patient. I had a thermos full of hot coffee, a bag of snacks, and this unshakable belief that I was smarter than a piece of rope. Then, as dusk started to bleed across the sky in bruised shades of purple and orange, the fairground started to whisper. It was just a wind at first, a low moan whistling through the skeleton of the Ferris wheel. But then another sound joined in, faint, tinny, and just grotesquely cheerful. Calliope music. It was warped and distorted like a melted record, but it was absolutely the tune that the old carousel used to play. I froze. My fingers tangled deep in a loop of rope. I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me. You know how your head does that in creepy places? Makes you see and hear the things you're most afraid of? I went back to the knot, my focus now sharpened by this creeping dread. I finally worked a big section of it loose. A thick, snake-like coil came free in my hands with this sickening, tearing sound. The second it fell away, a string of coloured light bulbs on the tilt-a-whirl flickered on across the midway. They buzzed and sputtered, their weak light landing right on the grinning face of a clown painted on the ride. I just stared, my heart pounding in my chest. It's just a short, just an electrical problem, I told myself. Just a fluke, just some decaying wires. It had to be. Then the Ferris wheel started creaking. Not the random groans of old metal anymore. This was rhythmic, a slow, deliberate turn, one agonizing inch at a time. I looked up, and I swear I saw a shadow in one of the cars, a dark silhouette against the last of the light. Real panic started to bubble up inside me. This was wrong, all of it. My hands were shaking as I fumbled around the splintered booth, searching for I don't even know what. My fingers brushed against a brittle piece of paper, wedged deep in a crack in the wood. It was a page torn from a diary. The handwriting was shaky, panicked. It said, "He weaves our joy into his prison. It feeds on laughter and light. Do not pull the final thread. The lock is not meant to be opened." He weaves our joy into his prison. The words hit me like ice water. Every happy scream, every good memory, every bright light from Jubilee Park's history. What if it wasn't gone? What if it had been collected, stored up? I looked at the knot, and I didn't see a puzzle anymore. I saw a cage woven from the stolen happiness of thousands of people. Anyone with half a brain would have run. They would have seen the lights, heard the music, read that warning, and gotten the hell out of there. But I wasn't thinking straight anymore. I was obsessed. The thought of the money was long gone, replaced by something darker, more primal. I just had to solve it. I had to win. I dove back at it like a man possessed. The rope almost felt like it was fighting back now. It was warm and slick. I swear I could feel a faint, slow pulse deep inside it. As my fingers worked at the final central loop, This thick, dark liquid that smelled like ozone and rot started seeping out, staining my hands. And then it happened. The final thread. With one last, desperate pull, I yanked it free. The knot didn't just come undone, it dissolved. The whole thing just went slack, collapsing into a pile of dusty, dead fibers, with a sound like a long, tired sigh. For 1 second, there was absolute silence. A deep, profound quiet that was way more terrifying than the phantom music. The wind died. The creaking stopped. I let out this shaky, triumphant laugh. I did it. It was over. What an idiot I was. A low hum started right under my feet, a vibration that I felt deep in my bones. It grew, spreading out from the booth. The ground itself was groaning like it was waking up from a long, long sleep. The air got thick, heavy, and charged with this ancient, evil energy. This time, the midway lights didn't just flicker. They exploded to life in a blinding, hellish carnival blaze. The carousel's calliope music erupted, no longer faint but a deafening, twisted shriek. The ride started spinning faster and faster, a blur of nightmare colours. The painted smiles on the horses stretched into snarling, grotesque grins, their glass eyes glowing with a feral red light. The Ferris wheel spun at a sickening speed, its cars swinging wildly, and they weren't empty now. Each one held a tall, thin shadow, a figure of pure darkness that seemed to just swallow the light around it. The clown at the funhouse let out a deep, booming laugh that vibrated through the whole park, its painted mouth cracking open into a real maw, a gate to some black, starless place. Then they started coming out, from the shadows of the rides and the rotting game stalls, the park mascots, the happy bear, the giggling raccoon, the smiling candy cane. But they were all wrong, twisted. Their bodies were stretched out, their limbs moving the jerky, unnatural snap of a broken puppet. Their smiling, plastic faces were now masks of pure horror, their eyes just hollow pits of despair. The riches I was promised, the luxury, it was all a lie. The knot wasn't a lock on a treasure chest, it was a cork in a bottle. And I'd just unleashed hell on our world. I'm writing this from a boarded up basement, miles away from the park. But the distance doesn't matter. I can still hear it. When the wind is just right, I can hear the faint, insane tune of the calliope. The carnival isn't stuck behind that rusty fence anymore. It's spreading. At first, the news called it mass hysteria. Reports of strange sightings, people just vanishing from the roads near the old park. Now the stories are changing. People are talking about long shadow-like figures at the edges of the woods, about a clown's laughter echoing down empty streets at midnight. They talk about a kind of terror that feels playful, and that's the most horrifying part. I didn't get a lifetime of luxury. I got a lifetime of listening to this. I'm the man who opened the door, the fool who untied the knot. I'm tied to this nightmare forever. The legend wasn't a total lie, I guess. It promised a lifetime of something. And for the ancient, awful thing that was trapped in that rope, this world of fear and chaos, well, this is its luxury. I solved the puzzle, and now our world is its prize. They're coming. The music is getting louder. Don't ever let greed make you stupid. Don't ever ignore the old warnings. Some doors are meant to stay closed. Some knots should never, ever be untied. And that concludes tonight's story. So, I'm curious to know, have you ever seen a place like this? A place with a story that felt a little too real? If so, tell me about it in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories about how badly things can go wrong, subscribe so we know we're not alone out here. Thanks for listening. Stay safe and stay the hell away from forgotten places.